Welcome to El Pomar Natatorium. Today we've got Denver Swimming and Diving against Colorado School of Mines. I'm here, Zach Baylor. I was DU alumni from the swim team, and I'm here with...
I'm John Bruliette, and I'm a DU alumni from the diving team. And honored to be joining Zach in this live stream, commentating today.
And we're off. That was our first dive, Tatum Brassfield from DU doing a forward 2.5 somersault pike.
It was a very solid dive, scored 7s on that. Coming up next, the same dive from Sydney, 105B with a DD of 2.4. Very nice dive. Just a tad bit over on the bottom, but a very nice start. Very nice control in it.
Awesome. Up
Sixes
next,
and sevens.
6s and 7s, that's awesome. Up next, we've got Savannah Berry, also from DU, doing an inward 2.5 somersault tuck with a difficulty of 2.7. After this dive, I'm curious. I'm very much a swimmer. John, can you give us a breakdown on what the DD or degree of difficulty is?
Yeah, of course. Very nice start. Washed over just a tad bit, but still a very solid dive. 6 and 7.5. So the DD, the way that diving is scored is they take 3 judge scores out of however many judges there are, and then they add those up and multiply them by the degree of difficulty. So harder dives will get you more scores.
Even if you get lower ratings on them, to some degree?
To some degree.
Yeah, there's a balance.
There's a risk and reward there. Got Dakota Parker up
on the
doing a
men's 1 meter.
205C 3.0. That's a very difficult dive. That's definitely deserving of the 3.0 degree of difficulty. Very nice start. Really hard to fit that dive in on 1 meter, but he handled it well, just a little bit short.
Next up, we have Bruno Albertoni from Colorado School of Mines doing a back 1.5 somersault pike.
Just a tad bit leaning back on the start there, and as a result, washed over a little bit on the bottom, but still a solid dive with 5s and 6s.
Next up, we have Colin Brewer, also DU, doing an inward 1.5 somersault pike.
Oh, looks like he changed his dive to a front 1.5 pike. Very, obviously Colin is a master at that dive. That's an easier dive. He got 7s on that. From what I understand, Colin is recovering from an injury, so he's doing a little bit of an easier list today, which explains the easier dive there. Trip up next. Wow. That's a very nice dive. The height and the power into that to be able to kick out at the water and hold that position like that is very impressive, and let alone with the rip entry on the bottom. Very nice dive.
Now back to women's 3 meter. We've got Tatum Bradsfield doing a back 2.5 somersault tuck.
This was one of my least favorite dives. Second in place to the gainer 2.5. Okay, very nice start on that. Little over at the bottom. Bit of a late kick there.
Also, I'm curious, just diving, how it works. I know Colin made a game time decision on that dive. How does that work? Are you allowed to just dive whatever you want?
Well, you have to do, with a 6 dive list, you have to do 1 dive of each category, which adds up to 5 dives, and then you can choose 1 category to do 2 dives in. And you can change the dives on the board so long as you still accomplish those rules.
That was Sydney McCoy with a inward 2.5 somersault tuck.
Little bit off to the side there, bit over on the bottom.
And up next we have Savannah Berry with a back 1.5 somersault, 1.5 twist.
Six and 7.5 for Savannah's dive. Next up, Dakota with a 305C with a DD of 3.0. Very nice dive from Dakota. Very controlled, perfect kick out timing, and knew what to do with the entry. Very nice dive. Next up, we got Bruno Albertoni doing a 305C, the same dive, 3.0. Strong start, strong in the air. Just a tad bit messy on the kick out, but very nice timing. 6 and 6.5 for that dive. Colin doing a 405C. Oh, looks like he changed this dive as well. To a 105B, very nicely performed. There's little to say about that dive. 6.5's across for that. Trip up next from Denver, doing a 305C 3.0. Wow. Very nice dive, a little bit early on the kick out, but so he had to arch his body to reach for that rip entry, and he made it. Very nice entry. 6 and 6.5 for that dive.
Next up, back on the women's 3 meter, we have Tatum Brasfield doing a reverse 2.5 somersault tuck.
Nice. Very strong dive. Good timing on the kick out. Nice start. That scores 6.5 across.
What are you thinking about when you're doing a reverse dive? I know that from an outsider looking in, that's got to be one of the scariest looking things.
Definitely. This is Tatum doing a front 1.5 with a double twist.
I think that was.
Oh, excuse me. That was Sydney McCoy from the University of Denver.
And next up we have Savannah Berry, again DU, doing a reversed 2.5 somersault tuck.
Yeah, so this was one of my least favorite dives. In terms of what divers are thinking on the board doing a gainer, typically focusing on the start when you're on the board and trusting the practice once you're in the air to know where to kick, trusting you know what to do with your start. And that's why sometimes getting a really good start in a meet can actually be a bad thing, because then you don't know what to do with it if you've never gotten that start in practice.
So when you're saying start, that's just the jump off the board?
The take off the board, the position you're in when you're leaving the board, how much height you get, how much rotation you let the board give you. Very nice takeoff. Oh, very nice dive. Kicked straight up vertical, causing just a little bit to wash over at the ankles, but just a shorter kick, and that would have been a very, very clean dive. It was already a very clean dive, but
It's so interesting to hear that you can take off too well.
this is Dakota doing a 105B. Very nice dive. Not much to say about that. I mean, you can't take off too well, but in a meet, you want to let the practice talk.
Yeah, do what you did in practice. You don't want to be
Exactly.
changing from that. Up next, Bruno with a back 1.5 somersault with a 1.5 twist.
Very nice entry on that dive.
That looked good.
6 is across for Bruno. This is Colin doing a back 1.5 pike with a DD of 2.3. Just washing a little bit over at the ankles there, but you can see Colin did a nice job of working it underwater and pulling his knees in to save a little bit of the splash that he would have gotten from that dive.
Up next, Trip Gregory with a forward 2.5 somersault pike.
Very nice entry. Trip is a master at working those entries. I would say maybe just a little bit early on the come out on that dive, but Trip worked it well and got nice scores on that. 6.5 and 7, I believe.
Up next, Tatum on 3 meter doing an inward 1.5 somersault pike.
Very nice pike position and lines in the air. Looked like maybe the head was ducked just a little bit on the entry, on the come out, and so just washing a little bit over. This is Sydney from DU doing a back 2.5 tuck, DD 2.8.
Sorry.
Very strong start there. Good timing on the kick out. That was a very solid dive. 6 and 6.5 for that. And up next, Savannah Berry from DU doing the same dive, a back 2.5 tuck. Very nice start, just a bit short on the kick, just a little bit lower than what was needed for that dive. But the movements in the air, the form itself, the kick itself was very strong, just a little bit early on the timing.
On the men's 1 meter now, we have Dakota doing an inward 1.5 pike.
Very nice dive from Dakota. 7's across.
Up next, Bruno with a forward 2.5 pike, DD of 2.6.
Nice dive. A little bit out away from the board, but a forgivable distance. Very nice entry on that, though.
Up next, Colin with a reverse 2.5 tuck.
Okay. Looks like he changed that dive to a reverse 1.5 tuck. Very well executed, maybe just a little bit over.
Yeah, that would, the full one would have been a 3.0, so I can imagine, you know, if you're trying to take it easy, that's not the dive to be throwing.
Oh, that's definitely a very difficult dive. A gainer 2.5.
On 1 meter.
On 1 meter specifically. And on 3 meter.
That was trip with an inward 1.5 pike.
Very beautiful dive. If you notice, there was kind of 2 bubbles that emerged after his entry. That's the bubbles that happen after he swims his arms. And I mean, there was no splash on that entry. That was a very nice dive.
Up next on 3 meter, Tatum with an inward 2.5 tuck.
A little bit away from the board on the start, so she had to really work to find that entry. A little bit bent knees on the entry, but solid dive. We have Sydney doing a gainer 1.5 tuck with a DD of 2.0. On this dive, we're looking for a nice tall takeoff and a very strong kick that'll stop the momentum of the dive before reaching back for the entry. Very nice finding the vertical for that entry. Scores 6s.
Up next, Savannah with a forward 2.5 pike. I'm curious, what are you thinking about differently when you're on a 3 meter versus a 1 meter board? I know you're competing both of them, right, back to back in a way, but
ideally, the same amount of fear, but that is not typically the case in reality. That was a very nice dive, a little bit head buried on the come out there, so just washing over a little bit, but very nice in the air. The biggest difference is that the dives on 3 meter are going to be more flips. They're going to be typically scarier, along with the extra height that a 3 meter provides. But the basics, the takeoff, the walk, everything should be the same. Very nice dive from Dakota. That was a front 1.5 with a double twist.
wow.
7 and 7.5 for that dive.
Up next, Bruno with the same dive, forward 1.5 with 2 twists.
Looks like maybe he didn't get his hands together right at the end there, but in the air, the twist positions, that was a strong dive.
Up next, Colin with a forward 2.5 pike.
Looks like he changed that dive.
Well, we get to see firsthand what he's about to do.
I believe this is an inward 1.5 pike. Yep.
Well, we have a fortune teller with us today, everyone.
That looks like a very comfortable dive for Colin. His movements in the air look like he's practiced those and he just knows what to do, doing an inward 1.5.
Up next, Trip with a back 1.5 pike.
Again, looking for a strong kick out to stop the momentum. There it is. Yes, very nice dive. 7 and 7.5 for that.
Now we have Tatum in round 6 with a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists.
Very nice dive. What we're looking for in this dive specifically is waiting until the twist has come around to the 1.5 before piking down, so you don't get a little sideways in the air. And that was very well done.
Sydney with a back 1.5, flips with 1.5 twists. Same dive here. Degree of difficulty of 2.4. Do you enjoy competing the same dive as someone right before you, or is that get in your head a little bit?
You know, it depends for everybody. Nice dive by Sydney. A little bit early coming into the end of that before piking down and lining up the dive.
Up next, Savannah with a back 1.5 somersault, but 2.5 twists this time, bringing it up to a 2.8 difficulty.
You know, in terms of competing a dive right after somebody did the same one, it's different for everybody. For me personally, it never bothered me. I like to watch the meets and watch the other divers compete. And I know some people like to focus with music in their headphones, whatever it takes, whatever's comfortable for the athlete. So as you can see, one extra twist from the dives performed before. Very nicely done. 6.5s for that. And we got Dakota doing a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists on 1 meter, 2.5. Very nice takeoff, very nice twist, just a little bit short, still scoring 6s and 7s.
Up next, Bruno with an inward double in a tuck.
2.8.
Oh wow, that's a solid difficulty.
It's very much a high DD dive, a little bit unconventional going in on the feet.
And that's because you don't have a run up, right? All your force is just at the beginning.
Ooh, a little bit over. So the risk with these foot entries going in, flipping forward, doing a foot entry is that it's a blind entry. You can't see before you put your feet down. And you can see it's a little bit of risk and reward, and there he kind of swiped the feet with his water and went a bit over.
Now we've got Colin doing a forward 1.5 with 2 twists.
Ooh, looks like he changed that dive to a front double with a full twist. This is typically used as a lead up for the 2.5 with a full twist on 3 meter. That dive scored 4s and 6s. Definitely an unconventional dive. I don't know if I've ever seen that dive competed, but nicely done by Colin, a little bit bent in the legs.
He got a lot of height off that takeoff. I saw a splash from the board touching the water.
Oh yeah, Colin can dip the board in the water. I love watching Colin dive because he uses that board. And now we got Tripp doing a back 1.5 with 1.5 twists. Wow, what an entry on that dive. Tripp's been doing disappearing acts the whole competition, and that's just the cherry on top. 6.5s across for that.
And a round of applause from the audience.
Yep.
That does it for our first board. We will be back with women's 1 meter and men's 3 meter after the break. Thanks for joining us. and we're back. Warm-up's just finishing up for the next event, and we also have our scores from women's 3-meter and men's 1-meter. Starting with women's 3-meter, we have in third place Sydney McCoy from University of Denver with a 260.10. In second place, we have Tatum Brassfield from DU with a total score of 266.63. And in first place, we have Savannah Berry, also from DU, with a total of 291.38.
And that is a zone qualifying score for Savannah.
Congrats, Savannah. Moving on to the men's 1-meter results. In fourth place, we have Colin from DU with 257.63. In third place, from Colorado School of Mines, we have Bruno Albertoni with a total score of 278.85. In second place, Trip Gregory from DU with a total of 303.08, a zones qualifying score. And in first place from DU, Dakota Parker with a total of 325.05. Congrats, Trip and Dakota, on the zones cuts. Now warm-up has concluded. I can see the divers standing around their boards, and they should be starting any minute now. The next event we have is women on the 1-meter for 6 dives and men on the 3-meter for 6 dives.
Beginning round 1, women's 1-meter, Sydney, dive 105C.
Starting off with Sydney McCoy from University of Denver doing a forward 2.5 in a tuck position.
On this dive, control is the name of the game for the come out. Very nicely done. Just a little washing over on the ankles there. But a good start and a good kick out. 6 and 6.5.
Tatum Brassfield from DU on a forward 2.5 somersault in a pike position.
Very nice takeoff, very nice pike position. 6.5 for that dive.
Savannah up next with an inward 1.5 in a pike position.
Savannah is a master at that dive. I remember admiring her very strong takeoff on her inwards. And once again, we see it there. 6 and 6.5 for that dive.
On the men's 3-meter, starting off is Bruno Albertoni from Colorado School of Mines with a back 2.5 in a tuck position.
Very nice takeoff, very nice timing, kicking at the board like that. The feet were a little bit apart, a little bit incongruent with the toe point. Just washing over a little bit, but it looked like a controlled dive.
He looked like he was rotating very quickly.
Oh yeah, that was a very nice start from Bruno.
Trip with the forward 2.5 in a pike position.
Once again, we see that disappearing act. 6.5s across for that dive.
And Dakota up next with a back 2.5 in a pike position. On the 3-meter, we are just going to have these 3 men competing.
That is a very difficult dive to fit in, even with 3 meters, but Dakota does that well. He finds the entry. 6 is across for that one.
Yeah, I would love to hear you elaborate a little bit on the difference between, you know, pike and tuck. I know it's very, you know, easy to see, but like, how does that feel different, you know?
Well,
After Sydney McCoy goes with this inward 1.5 tuck.
very nice takeoff. Washing a little bit over on that, but well executed. The difference between a pike and a tuck, you can feel definitely more with the more amount of flips that you do. And on a back 2.5, it's the pike typically has to be a little bit more whippy instead of stuck, which would be kind of like flipping with your shoulders versus with your arms, which means that you might have less control on the kick out, but you need that extra whip to get the dive around.
That was Tatum with a reverse 1.5 somersault in a pike position, with earning her 6 and 6.5. So does it just feel like you're rotating slower through the air? Is that?
Well, typically you are.
Well, yes, yeah.
And sometimes it's easier to spot with a pike, spot your flips in the dive, and sometimes it's easier with a tuck.
Great dive there from Savannah with a forward 2.5 in a tuck position.
Very nicely controlled dive.
Up on 3 meters now, Bruno with a reverse 2.5 somersault.
So the leg's a little bit slow getting to the kick out, a little uncertain it looked like, but a very nice timing, and he found the vertical on that dive.
Trip up next with a forward 2.5, flips with a single twist in a pike position. That's a mouthful.
Typically known as full out, but among divers, it's a much easier way to describe it. Very nice entry on that dive. It's called a full out because there's 2 ways to do that dive. You can twist first and then flip, or you can flip and then twist in the middle, as we see that Trip did.
In my defense, it did not say full out on the piece of paper.
Yeah, that's just lingo. Dakota doing a 305B. Just
Awesome.
a tad bit short, but a very strong takeoff. And that strong takeoff is needed for that dive. It was a very well executed dive, a little bit short, but that's not going to matter with the degree of difficulty.
Yeah. Those last 2 dives are both 3.0 DDs. So some of the hardest dives we've seen all day.
Oh yeah, anything above a 3 is a very a very legitimate and difficult dive.
Sydney from DU with a forward single flip with 2 twists. Next up, Tatum with a forward 1.5 with a twist.
Beautiful dive, beautiful twist position. No unnecessary movements in that dive. 7's across.
Savannah up next with a reverse 1.5 in a pike position.
Very nice takeoff, putting her feet vertical and finding the entry on that dive. 7.5 and 7s.
Up next on the 3 meter is Bruno with a forward 3.5 in tuck position, 2.8 DD.
I mentioned earlier that anything above a 3.0 is a hard dive. That is not to say that everything under is an easy dive. Everything that these divers are doing today are very difficult movements. And that was a very well executed dive by Bruno. 6.5 and 7 with that rip entry on it.
Tripp up next with the same dive.
Oh, yeah. Very nice dive by Tripp. Very controlled. Once again, disappearing act by Tripp.
Now Dakota on the 3 meter is going with a forward 2.5 in a pike position.
A lot of height on that dive.
That rotation just looks so easy and controlled.
So graceful, so controlled. You know that Dakota has done that dive maybe 1,000 times.
Next up, Sydney on the 1 meter with a back 1.5 in the tuck position.
Nice takeoff. A little bit of a short kick leading to a short entry there, but very nice entry. 6.7 is the official score.
Looked like Tatum celebrated that. Up next, she has her back 1.5 in a pike position.
A little bit of a washing over on the bottom there. That's a good example, those two dives back to back, to see the difference between a tuck and a pike. You really have to work the pike a little bit more, and especially work the kick out to stop the momentum.
Savannah with the same dive as Tatum.
Very nice lines. Looked like Savannah tried to save a little bit early, which means she pulled her legs underwater, but did it maybe a little bit early, and that affected the outcome of the entry. A front 1.5 double twist from Bruno. A very graceful dive to watch on 3 meter, in my opinion. 6 and 6.5.
Up next, we've got Tripp with a reverse 2.5 in pike position. Another 3.0 dive.
For as small as that splash was, that might be the biggest splash that Tripp has made today, and that is saying something. That was a very nice dive.
Dakota up next, inward 2.5 in a pike position. When you're saying kicking out of a pike position, when I think kicking, I'm thinking my legs, right? But your legs are straight in a pike, so is that all coming from your core?
Yeah, core and hips. It's more of an extension than a kick, I suppose. But with the speed that you do it, you want it. I guess that's why we call it a kick, because it's so quick. But the idea is if you kick with your arms kind of like in your pant pockets, then that'll really slow down your momentum and allow you to reach without washing over or affecting your momentum. A little bit short on that dive, scoring a 6 and a 5.5, but that is a difficult dive at 3.0. That's going to score well.
Back to women on 1 meter, we have Sydney with a reverse 1.5 in the tuck position.
little bit of a high kick there. What I mean by that is the angle of the kick was a little bit past, over-rotated past where it should have been, causing her to wash over just a little bit.
Now Tatum with the inward 1.5 in a pike position.
Very nice dive. Very nice position on the takeoff. Finding a very nice vertical line for the entry there. 6.5 and 7.
Now Savannah with a back 1.5 with half twist.
Very nice entry.
Now
7's across.
Bruno from Colorado School of Mines with a back 1.5 with a 1.5 twist.
Just a little bit short on that dive. 5.5, 6.5.
What are you thinking about when you're trying to, minimize your splash? Because as a non-diver, the dive I just saw, he looked pretty vertical. And that was maybe a little bit more of a splash than I would have expected from that dive.
We talk a lot about being vertical in diving, but you actually want to be vertical kind of when your hips are underwater. And so really you want to line it up just a little bit shorter and straighten out just a little bit shorter than vertical so that you can fall into that position. And tightness of the shoulders is the name of the game. You have to be tight on the entry, especially when you go up in height.
Trip with an inward 2.5.
It's a very nice takeoff, a little bit early in the come out.
And
5.5s.
Dakota up next with a forward double, or no, 2.5 with a full twist. Does that have a fancy name?
Full out.
Also full out.
Same dive.
Was that the same
Right.
dive we talked about earlier? Whoops.
Unless he twisted first. Nope. Very nice dive.
Awesome dive. Another 3.0 difficulty.
Not quite the rip entry that he was looking for, but 6.5 and 7, that is going to score well. That's also a 3.0 dive.
Sydney with her last dive on 1 meter. Back 1.5 with 1.5 twist.
Looks like a little bit of a premature gentle pike in the twist there, causing a little bit of a cartwheel, but 6 and 5, there's still a very solid dive. Worked the entry well.
Tatum up next with almost the same dive. Back 1.5 with half a twist this time.
Very nicely controlled.
And Savannah up next with a back single with a 2.5 twist. 2.7 difficulty on 1 meter.
This, along with the inward double on 1 meter, are some of the more common foot entry dives for their high degree of difficulty. Beautiful twist by Savannah, a little bit over on the entry. 5.5s across.
And starting off round 6 with Bruno on the men's 3 meter, he is doing an inward 2.5 in a tuck position.
Nicely done. You can tell Bruno has a lot of awareness and control with that dive.
Trip up next with a back 2.5 in a tuck position. This is a 2.8 difficulty.
Wow. Very strong takeoff there. A little bit early in the kick, so Tripp had to arch his back a little bit to find the rip entry, but found the rip entry. Very, very nice dive.
And Dakota, our last dive of the day, with a back 1.5 with 2.5 twists. That's a lot going on.
Wow. Very beautiful dive by Dakota. 7.5's across. That's going to score well.
And round of applause from the audience. 2.8 degree difficulty there. Question on, so we just had those 2 dives, the inward double, 2.5, sorry, and the back 2.5. How is that degree of difficulty determined? When I think as a non-diver, I'll preface that, back flips definitely seem difficult, but an inward seems more difficult for me personally. Is that just a scare factor and not a difficulty factor?
I mean, with all divers, there are strengths and weaknesses. For example, a gainer 2.5 might be the scariest thing in the world for somebody, but also they might love doing a front 3.5, whereas another diver might feel super uncomfortable with the front 3.5 and loves the gainer 2.5. But with those dives, typically there might be awarded more degree of difficulty points for dives that are moving in the opposite direction than the way you are rotating. So for an inward, that would be you're standing in a backward position, but you start doing a front flip towards the board. However, the difference with the inward 2.5 and the back 2.5 is that the back 2.5 is a blind entry, and so you can't see the water before you enter it, but an inward 2.5, you are watching the water for the last half flip of the dive, and you can adjust, whereas with a back 2.5, you have to adjust based on your surroundings, the diving board, the walls of the pool, the ceiling. So typically, a blind entry is more difficult.
Well, thanks for joining us today on the diving side, John. I appreciate
Thanks for
your
having me.
insight. We are done with diving. We will come back with the results before we start swimming, and we will be back a little bit earlier. Swimming starts at 3 p.m. However, we have a interview with head coach Alicia Franklin beforehand, so we should be back around 2:45. Thanks for tuning in.